Welcome to the Ellis Talker Show. If you enjoy our content, please like or subscribe.
Hi, welcome to the Ellis Talker Show. I'm DV LeBron. Do you have construction needs? Maybe you want to get something done in the kitchen. Check out K&H Construction with Chris Helms out of Waxahachie. He'll take care of you. Let him know DV LeBron sent you. Today, my very special guest is Mr. Paul Dineen, who is running for Ellis County Precinct 2 Commissioner. How you doing, sir?
I'm good, sir. How are you? And thank you for inviting me on here.
Oh, thanks. Thank you for coming on. And thank you for being at the forum. That was really cool to have you there and all the other candidates. And I do appreciate you giving me your time.
You're welcome, sir.
I always tell every candidate that comes on, thank you for wanting to serve your community in this rough and tumble thing that's Ellis County politics and, just politics in general, how hard it could be on your family. Thank you for wanting to serve your community.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you.
So what made you want to run, John?
Well, for many years, I have been an advocate for the farm and ranch families in Ellis County for over 18 years. And I have a love for Ellis County. And when I heard that the current commissioner was going on to run another race and it was going to be an open seat, I just felt that I had a good skill set that I have learned over these years of being self-employed and advocating for folks and just having a servant's heart to serve the people, that I could bring some good things to the table for Precinct 2.
Who is Paul Dineen for people who don't know you?
Paul Dineen is a Christian, is a father of 4, 2 boys, 2 girls, been married 26 years, coming 27 years. I have lived in Ellis County, born and raised. I'm 52 years old. I grew up on the west side of Waxahachie in the community of Boz. If you ever heard of the superconducting super collider,
I remember you telling me.
That's where Boz used to be. I have farmed for over 32 years for a living. I'm a first generation farmer. Nobody in my family ever farmed before. I started with equipment that was left in turn rows. People said, if you can get it out of the trees, you can have it and you can fix it up and do whatever you want to with it. I'm very thankful that God allowed me the skills to work on things, to fix things, and to do my heart's desire since I was a little boy of be a farmer. It's not always been easy. There's been ups and downs, but in the end, it's the best thing, best life that a person could ask for.
It's so far out of my understanding, but I mean, I know that it's a struggle for you farmers and everything that you have to go through. So, I mean, there's just a lot going on with that. But what is the proper role of government in the lives of the people? Because knowing your principles, that would help people if they want to vote for you.
So I'm taking that as a little bit of a twofold question. The proper role of, of government is to, assist folks when they need it and to offer services with the taxes that they pay, services like having roads to get to work, to get back and forth to their house. I've been fortunate that I have known people that are in their 90s now, upper 90s, that remember when there were not farm to market roads and there were not paved roads. They were not gravel roads. There were barely dirt trails. And when it would rain, they would have to spend the night in Waxahachie because they couldn't make it back to 5 Points because the roads were mud. And so I think that's, one of the roles that we are supposed to be, do the best with their hard-earned tax dollars. And one of them would be providing a good, as good a road as you can to get back and forth. It may not be an Autobahn, but it's a far cry from where it used to be just about 2 generations ago.
A horse and carriage road?
Yes, sir.
One of the big things that people talk about, Mr. Dineen, in Texas is property taxes. And there's a lot going on in Austin. The cities charge more, the schools take more of the tax bill, but the county does contribute. What are your thoughts in general on taxes every year? How are you going to approach that?
Well, like I had mentioned just a little bit, is you try to do the best with the taxes that you collect, and you offer a good, basically, return on investment from your taxpayers. Now, we also have to keep in mind the world has changed in the last 4 years. You cannot hire labor for what you used to hire labor for. Utilities are higher. Everything costs more. And so it is hard to make that money go as far as it used to. The sealant that they would put down for chip seal roads, which is what the county roads are made out of, used to cost $1.30 a gallon. Now it's over $2 a gallon. So that makes your mile of chip seal road run about $80,000 to put in there. So backing, that up, we have to, and I'm a taxpayer just like everybody else, and that bill is high, and you wonder how in the world you're going to pay for that. And you're right, it gets chopped up into pieces. But we also have to kind of put a balance in there of what kind of county services do we want versus the tax bill. And there's got to be kind of a balance. You can't have, everything as far as very short lines at county facilities to get your taxes done or what have you, and a cheap tax bill at the same time, because those kind of balance together. You have to have the infrastructure, the building, the employees. Now let's talk about employees just for a second. This last year, the county went through in their budget and they upped salaries to law enforcement and things like that to get it back on a level playing field with other areas and other things. And that's important, because if we as a county do not do that, we are going to lose good employees because they need to do better for their family and they're going to go somewhere else. And so we want to pay a good fair wage so that we retain those good employees. And so it's a big wagon wheel. There's a lot of spokes in it, but in the end, it comes down to a balance of what tax rate are we willing to pay for what services, including roads, that we want to have.
Do you believe when you approach the budget, will you look at it as being a good steward of the people's money?
You bet. So the boards that I have served on as chairman, one of the things that I would remind my board members of is we are spending somebody else's money that they have trusted us with. And we need to do that like it was our own hard-earned money. And we need to be prepared to answer the questions from our taxpayers, from our constituents, of why we spent it the way that we did.
Yeah. And that's important. But one of the biggest, and you mentioned it earlier, because it's kind of a prime, besides law enforcement, there's another function of, the county, and it's roads. So what are your thoughts on the road, the current road, the state of the road in Precinct 2? What would you like to be done differently?
Well, so there's about 232 miles of roads in Precinct 2. Now, keep in mind, county commissioner is on the county roads. You have farm to market roads that are controlled by the state, and then you have city roads and things like that. We do have growth in areas of Precinct 2, just like in areas of all of Ellis County. I think what we have to try to do is, there is not a budget to just fix everything at one time. We have to chip away at it, and we have to use some foresight, and we have to try to do what we can as we're working and to be as efficient as possible. And so what I mean is, if there's a road that is coming up to where we need to redo this road, when we look at it, let's maybe look at what's the growth on the road. Is it a high traffic? Is there high vehicle count on there? What do the culverts look like under the road? Are they 40 years old, 50 years old? Are they still narrow? Do they need to be pulled out and widened a little bit? Because my thought is to try to lengthen the life of those county chip seal roads, try and add a little bit of width to them. And so what I mean is, if you've been down a county road and you go to pass somebody, both of you are pretty much getting one tire either right on the edge of the chip seal or a little on the grass, okay?
Right.
And you can tell looking at those roads where that happens the most, because it will erode the width and it'll crumble it away. So when we redo those roads, if we can take those ditches out a foot or two each way, expand the culverts a little bit, put a nice crown on the road, widen it out there to where those cars have a little more room to pass without getting off those edges there, then that will extend the life of that road. By changing those culverts and stuff, we can also update the drainage a little bit on there to where maybe in some areas, in heavy rains, you can't fix all the flooding, but maybe you can help with drainage a little bit. But it's steps like that of trying to identify what's going on, what's feasible while you're working on it to fix. And, as a farmer, a lot of times we look over our equipment and we have to try to look at it and go, I think that bearing's fixing to fail. I'm going to go ahead and change that so that it doesn't break down when we're in the middle of harvest. So a road would be similar. Try to look at some of those drainage points or erosion points or some of those culverts, and maybe they're old concrete culverts, and go, that concrete's starting to split and crack. I think that's going to go out. So let's do that ahead of time while we're fixing the road, rather than fix it and then go, a year later, that culvert cracked out or what have you, and then we're tearing up what we already fixed to do it again.
Right. And that's efficiency. That's one thing that government doesn't do well, but it's definitely needed. Now, you had mentioned growth during that time. And as you know, growth is here and things are expanding. Some of the farms of people that you have known throughout the years are now developments. So you have things like muds and pits coming. You have sections of the county, and you do in Precinct 2, I'm pretty sure, where it looks like a city. It no longer has these farmlands. It looks like you're running through Arlington, and so you have those kind of problems going on. How would, and I know you're only one, but how would you like to tackle growth? And what do you think the county could do to make sure that things like those roads and, as best it could, keep up with all these developments?
So what is in place right now in Ellis County, if you are a developer and you're coming to the commissioner's court to do a development, what's in place is a 1 acre size for an aerobic septic system to be permitted. Your roads in that addition have to be 27 feet wide, 6 inches of lime, 6 inches of DOT concrete flex base under them, and then 6 inches of concrete with rebar if it is a local road, 7 inches if it's an artery, 8 inches if it is a main road in there. Plus, you have to submit a drainage plan of what you're going to do with that water and all of those things. So that's what they've got going right now. Now, though traffic comes onto a county road, like we had talked about, if a state representative would like to give some authority to county commissioners to be able to say, you're going to add 200 cars a day on this county road right here. We need to redo that road, widen it, do these kind of things to where we could get with the engineer and come up with a fee for that. But right now, we as a county court of commissioners have no authority over that. We would have to have some regulation passed at Austin to give us the right to do that. Right now, we can't. So we would just have to, do the best we can with the road. But that's where additions are. They have to build roads that are up to spec for potential that we'd like for them to last 15 or 20 years before they have to be repaired. They also have to put up a maintenance bond, and they have to maintain that road for 2 years. Then they have to come back to the commissioner's court, have all of their roads inspected, and the commissioner signs off on it of, yes, your roads are still in good shape. If they're not, they say, well, you need to go fix that before we will assume it. So there are checks in place to where, we shouldn't be handed an ugly duckling anymore.
Yeah. People may have a misconception, John, that, that there's things that the government can do that you can't in the county. But I just wanted to ask you a hypothetical because these things come up online. if you were a one-man band and you can do it, would you limit growth? Would you stop growth for a little while? Would you do a moratorium if that was something that could even be possible?
So, I'd never be a Lone Ranger because we're on a court of four. I'm
Right.
one of four. But that being aside, growth is a direct response of people's basic right as an American to pay what they want for land and sell their land for what they want to. And when those two things come together, that's where growth happens, is because you have got a buyer that's like, I want to pay you this, and you've got a seller that's, I'll take that and I'll sell it to you. So I never want to step on the American right to do that. Now, as a commissioner, can we supervise that growth? Can we look at, like you say, managing it so that we don't have all of the growth in one spot on one road? That's a crystal ball, almost like telling the weather. There has been steps, done 15 years ago in the county to try to have responsible growth. So years ago, you could sell lots off, and I kind of think it was 75 feet. That's now 150 feet. They've also got it to where if you're selling off lots in there, you must have a fire hydrant. I believe it's every 500 feet. That used to not be a rule, but through the fire marshal and stuff like that. And so what that did is that kind of changed that aspect of growth by putting in the fire hydrants and stuff like that, because that costs some real money on the people, not on the county, but on the people to put that in if they wanted to sell those lots. So that tapped the brakes just a little bit, things like that.
Yeah. I mean, there's always little things, but you said it right. Your land, you do that's as American as, apple pie.
That's right.
One of the things, and I was talking to you earlier about this, was that the county also, law enforcement, sheriffs, courts, there's a lot that the county is involved there. One of the aspects of it when it comes to the sheriff is that jail. The jail's old and it has some issues. I've toured it with Sheriff Brad Norman. We had a unfortunate, incident that caused the life of a great officer. And there's always those issues with the jail. And I want to know, what are your thoughts on the jail and how would you like to see that handled?
So I was around when that jail was built. There was a lot of conversation about, location and all that kind of good stuff. Again, as an outsider looking in, because I'm not sitting on the commissioner's court, I want to be cautious on any, thing that could be looked at as a criticism. It's not. My thought off the cuff is we relocate that to the county farm. We have a lot of room for expansion that the county already owns out there. Where the jail sits right now, it's pretty well landlocked around there. It would be very expensive to try to expand anything there. You also have a lot of elevation change on that hill right there where that jail sits that costs a lot of money. It would be more practical and reasonable at the county farm. Very little elevation change. It's pretty flat out there, a lot of room to grow. There are some facilities already out there. That would be kind of the logical choice of location. Now, I believe they've got a study working, or at least there's been talks of studies over an assessment of what do we need? How many beds do we need? What does it need to look like and everything? I haven't talked with Sheriff Norman, but I believe from what I'm hearing, we're looking at a 5 to 8 year window that we need to be ready to make some decisions by that time. I think we need to do our diligence now, start learning, educating, looking at what the suggestions are, looking at what his recommendations are, what his needs are, because in the end, that I think, that's the person you need to ask is the sheriff. Let him tell us what he needs. I, as a commissioner, don't need to tell the sheriff what you need. Now, I can suggest a location, but I don't need to tell him what that building looks like. That's his job, and that's his expertise, and that's his specialty. That's not mine. But I
Right.
think we need to start those things so that we are proactive about it and not reactive, not coming in here going, whoop, we're busting at the seams. That's it. I need a jail tomorrow.
Yeah.
I think we need to be proactive. We make better decisions that way.
Yes. The other thing they've talked about with law enforcement, sheriffs in the county is maybe a substation. There's been there's a lot because this county is growing. And like I said earlier, you have areas in it that look like regular city, and these sheriff's deputies are having to go out and really far and deal with things that you would normally have a lot on. Is a substation something you would think about?
You bet. I mean, it makes sense because you have your central hub, but like you say, the county is big, and with the growth, it slows that commute time or that response time down if you're coming. So it would make sense to have substations, at your major cities around. That would be better for the citizens. They would get a better response time, in there. Now, again, that takes funds to do that. That comes back to that balance of taxes. Again, I'm on the outside looking in. I know in the past, like with the Super Collider facility, they had a substation out there that was given to them over an old facility that was left from the Super Collider. Maybe there are some things like that, county buildings or what have you, that might be utilized and revamped, repurposed into substations. But yes, I think a substation makes sense in a populous county that we have, especially with 5 o'clock traffic. We get traffic jams and stuff around Ellis County now. That would add a level of safety to our citizens and cut response time.
That's just such a big function of the county. It's huge, and I didn't even go into the courts. That's a whole nother animal. But how important to you is transparency in government?
I think it is extremely important. And I like to say I've worn different hats, in my life. As a representative of agriculture, the way that I always did that was communication from myself representing the folks that I was representing back and forth was very important, because that cuts down on misunderstandings, on confusion. When you're expecting me to do something and it doesn't turn out exactly that way, you're kind of scratching your head going, well, I wonder why he voted that way, or I wonder why it didn't happen exactly like that. I always had good back and forth conversations with the people that I represented, whether it was something that turned out good or something that turned out not exactly the way they wanted. I gave them information and feedback of why it did. And I thought that was always very important, and I thought that was successful. So I would continue that if I was elected as commissioner, to have, you can call it town halls or what have you, to just stay in touch with the folks. When I would represent ag, I stayed in touch with them so that when I was representing them in Ellis County or Austin or in DC, I had a finger on the pulse of what was going on, and I could tell you what was happening. I think that's important with the constituents in Ellis County, is have a finger on the pulse of what they're feeling, what's going on, and a good two-way conversation.
Yes. Yeah. That two-way conversation is always good. And it's always better in person too. It gets crazy, kind of gets crazy online. But John, it's, one of the other functions of it, and I got to ask you, is of government too, is that veterans, Ellis County has a veterans court. They have a veterans center. They do a lot for veterans. And I am so grateful for the county being like that. Will you continue to support that if you're elected?
Yes, sir. And I appreciate your service. I believe you were in the Navy. And I think that is important. Those folks have invested a lot of their life and their energy to give us the freedoms to have our elections at the basic level and everything else that we do. So I think that is very important.
Before we get to close out, where I'll shut up and let you talk to the people of Ellis County. what is the absolute most pressing issue that you see coming in 5 years, in the next 5 years, that you see that, you would want to address?
We talked a little about the growth of the county jail and trying to be proactive there. I see county facilities, the tax office, different things like that as potential growth points coming. I think we need to try to do our best when feasible to, if we're looking to remodel something or repurpose a building or what have you, to think of it like we were with our, young teenage kids or young kids and we're out shopping. We're not going to buy them shoes that fits them perfect today or clothes that fit them perfect today, because we know as parents in about a month, they're going to be, oh, this doesn't fit anymore. So we try to buy something with a little room to grow. I think we should use that kind of thought when we are, like I say, repurposing a building or remodeling. And if it's feasible, try to build in a little bit of growth so that in a year or two, when we need to add an employee or two or expand an office or something, we're not going, well, we need another building. Let's go look. We have that room to grow in there.
Yeah. Well, this is the part of the show where I give you the mic to talk to the people directly right before elections start. Early voting is coming up here soon. So I'll be quiet and let you talk to them.
Well, I appreciate you letting me be here. I'm not a politician. I have been an advocate for folks in Ellis County. I have a love for Ellis County and I have a servant's heart. Those are things that you can say easily, but I'd encourage folks, go to votejpd.com and look at the things that I have done over the last 20 years for Ellis County and for the state of Texas. Take a Google search. I have been very fortunate to get the opportunity to do a lot of different things. And I think that those skills and those experiences give me a great skill set coming into the commissioner's court to be able to represent the folks of Precinct 2, represent Ellis County, and a good skill set from not only understanding how roads get built and how to better those, how drainage works, how to communicate with people, how to, make them feel like their voice doesn't fall on deaf ears, and return back to them and say, no, this is why we did what we did. I think all of those things together in my 32 years of living and working here and being a small business owner for 32 years gives me great benefits to the folks that I would represent.
Well, thanks again for being on the show. Can you stick around real quick?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.